We're good.
Very cool. So, I'm sure we've all been driving down the road, going 45, 50, doing the speed limit. We come across a Buick that's doing about 20, and some grandma hugging the steering wheel, and it gets really frustrating after a while. And, back in 2004, I was in La Habra, and I was rear-ended by an elderly man doing about 20 miles per hour. And I got out of my car, and I wasn't, necessarily happy about the situation. I told him, let's get off the road, let's go pull into a gas station. So we pull in, and he misses it, and he reverses in, and runs right to the side of my car, breaks all my windows, and hits it again. I'm sure we can all agree, it gets a little frustrating with the elderly driving, around us. So, I'm kind of arguing that, maybe drivers over the age of 70 should have to retest every year after they turn 70. So, the need for this is, back on July 16th, 2003, a man by the name of George Russell Weller, he was 85 years old. He was in his 92, and he's driving down his 92 Buick, and he's driving down the street, and he blacks out going about 75 miles per hour and turns into a crowded farmer market and kills 10 people and injures 70. Now, he was prosecuted in 2006, and he was sentenced to 18 years in prison because it wasn't his fault. But because he was so old, it would have been such a burden on the taxpayers and the prison system to keep him alive in the prison that he was just sentenced to a house arrest. And, I got that little story from Fox News. But, smartmotorist.com, predicts that within the next 20 years, because of the baby boomers, the amount of elderly drivers on the road will increase by, 3 times the amount of elderly drivers on the road. So there's some practicality behind this situation is, in 1997, 9% of the population who was driving was over 70 years old. But they accounted for just about 17% of all pedestrian accidents, or pedestrian fatalities, excuse me. So, the small amount of the population accounts for a high amount of, pedestrians being killed. This is just because of unsafe drivers, reaction times might be delayed, just different variables like that. And then also there's a lot of advantages that can help the public from taking the test every year after you're 70. First of all, another fact from Smart Motorist is 55% of the adults, which constitutes people 18 years old to 69 years old, were involved in fatal accidents. But they were all wearing seatbelts, so it's only about 55%. But 70% of people over the age of 70 who were involved in fatal accidents were also wearing a seatbelt. So when elderly people drive, even with restraints and seatbelts, they have a 20% higher chance of being in a fatal accident. I can see how some of the elderly community might be frustrated, having to retake a test every year. But it is for the good of society, and it could reduce car accidents, it could reduce pedestrian accidents. It make a safer community for all of us to live in. The current policy installed by the DMV, I got this off their website, states if a driver has been in 4 or more fatal accidents in their lifetime, after 70 their license is revoked. But after 70, if they've been in 2 or more, car accidents, then they have to retake a test every 2 years. So, as it stands, even if you're over the age of 70, if you have no accidents, you don't have to retake a test. But with such a population growth of elderly drivers within the next 20 years, that number is going to spike and can cause a lot more accidents on the road, making it a lot unsafe for everybody to drive. Now, so in order to make our community safer, our roads safer to drive on, and our roads even safer to walk on for pedestrians, as a matter of fact, drivers over the age of 70 should have to be retested each year, along with physical examination, an eye examination, and an actual driving test to prove that they are capable of handling a 3,000-pound vehicle traveling at death-like speeds. So, thank you.
Jake, some comments?
Yeah, I thought it was really good, actually. It was very funny the intro, I can really identify with the issue too. And then he's got a good claim. It makes sense and it's very clear. I like the idea. And then he's got some pretty solid examples, like for example, the old man killed a whole bunch of people. The whole accident. It's like there's really like an issue going on there. And he's pretty sourceful. He quoted a lot of sources and pointed out where he got the information from. And then he used a lot of statistics, and they were used pretty well. They were on point. And overall, he's got a good presentation, and he memorized pretty much all the whole speech, and it was really smooth. So I couldn't tell there was anything bad with it. So it was good.
All right. The visualization is pretty good. The personal experience that you use as your attention device, I think, works really well. So you've got a very clear statement of what your goal is. The preview could be a little bit more involved, but we know what the topic area is going to be. You do have a good example that you draw us in with on the one experience, although I don't think you get as much emotional resonance out of it later on as you could, and you could probably use a few more of those situations. The solution that you're proposing is an interesting one, but remember we talked about this. You need to show how something is practical, and you mentioned that the number of elderly drivers that we're going to be having is going to be increasing substantially. You know what it's like going to the DMV now? Can you imagine if we've got 3 times as many elderly people going to the DMV to do these tests I think you need to show that the states could afford it, or there's some way to do it, that it would be practical. We also need some information that shows that it would actually work. The truth of the matter is there's so many people. I mean, I've taken 3 teenage drivers in the last 4 years to go get their license, and I wouldn't have let them out on the road on a bet, and all 3 of them got their license the first time they went through, and I just thought, oh my God, and I'm out there on the road, and this is the ones that I know. So, you know, how likely is it that this is going to be an effective screening process? If there's someplace else, for instance, that uses a technique like this or has a policy that does this and it's effective at reducing the number of accidents or saving lives, I think that that would be something that you could add to the speech. Most of the presentation issues are pretty solid. You look at the audience and you speak. It's loud and clear. You've got excellent eye contact. You're not overly dependent on the script. You just have the 1 page of notes. If you could have put it on a card or 2, I think it would have been a little bit less distracting when you're waving it around. I did not start counting until 2.5 minutes into what is basically a 45-minute speech. Okay, so it's only 4 minutes and 45 seconds. I didn't start counting until 2.5 minutes in, but once I started counting, I got 20 you-knows. And so there were probably, let's say, 1/3 again as many of that before. So when you watch this back, I want you to count the you-knows and become aware of how frequently you do this. It's the one way that you make yourself aware that you're doing it. You got to pay attention to you're doing it. You got to strangle these things when they come up. They happen occasionally. It's not a problem when it happens as an occasional transition, but you go to it as a crutch. It's like instead of a comma, I've got a you-know, and that doesn't work very well. I found it a little annoying. All right.